Good evening, everybody. I'm Simon Mawhinney. I'm the composer of the first piece in this concert this evening, and I was invited by the orchestra to give a pre-concert talk, and I thought I might start by telling you an anecdote, which was of a wonderful sound I heard only a week or so ago, and it was on the train station to go towards Belfast, and I heard a sound which was, it created in me a kind of feeling of relaxation and peacefulness, and made me a little bit happy. And I thought, what is that sound? I couldn't quite pick it up. It was either a very large butterfly or a bat that was somehow awake in the day. I couldn't work it out, so I climbed up inside the little railway shelter and I found a rainwater fixing. And inside the rainwater fixing there was a little bird, some kind of blue tit or something, having a bath in the water, and it was flapping its wings in the water and making this lovely fluttering sound. And as soon as I climbed up and saw this bird making this little fluttering sound, I thought, this is exactly the moment I'd like to start with in doing this talk, because then I began to think about all the other sounds that we can hear. I'm sure everybody can think of particular sounds that have particular effects and resonances, such as fire burning, or a cat purring, or Westminster chimes, or I always feel if I'm in London, I have to hear Big Ben. I'm not really in London until I hear Big Ben. All sorts of sounds that everybody has prior experience of, not necessarily always having prior experience of, but we all have sounds that as soon as we hear them, they elicit an emotional reaction which is generally one that we enjoy having. And in fact, I think this enjoyment we have in responding to sound isn't necessarily always a happy one. We can sometimes enjoy being moved in a sad way by sound, but we always enjoy. There's always this palpable pleasure of listening to sound, and we enter into that world. And I think that listening to sounds is, for me, the most rich experience. I don't expect anyone else to sort of, I'm not trying to persuade you that this is the case, but I personally find what I can see less interesting than what I hear. Sometimes in art galleries and things we have these pieces which are audio-visual, which are video and sound, and I, again, this is not a value judgment, but I don't particularly like them. I typically close my eyes and just listen. If I come to the orchestra or any kind of live concert, I generally close my eyes to listen. If you haven't ever done this, it's worth trying. I find that if I watch the musicians, it kind of goes over my head a bit. It just is too much, it's overload. And on those moments where I think, this isn't meaning much to me, I'm not getting anything, if I close my eyes, then suddenly I can hear it all. And sometimes this happens in pieces that you might know very well, some classical symphony. I find hearing all the parts doesn't really happen for me unless I close my eyes. So that is a very interesting experience. It would be amazing if we could somehow turn out all the lights and hear the orchestra playing in pitch blackness, just to see that effect. And going back to the question of these amazing sounds that we can recall that elicit feelings, nostalgia and so on. If you imagine the effect that a sound can have on you, just a simple sound like a bird flapping its wings, just imagine what can be achieved when the human imagination actually takes those sounds and turns them into music. And I think therein lies the true miracle. When sound, which is already capable of this miraculous effect on us, is actually taken by us and turned into something that has a narrative, then we're talking about an experience of such richness and power that this is why I often say music is the most amazing thing that exists. And I actually had the strange privilege of saying this today on the Jerry Kelly show, but it is something I say a lot, that I think music is perhaps the most important thing that exists. Again, I don't really mind if people disagree. This is just my own position on the matter. And it was strikingly brought home to me today when I went to hear, I've been in this room a lot this week for rehearsals, and I heard the rehearsal this afternoon of the Beethoven Fourth Piano Concerto. And this is a really amazing piece. And again, this is one where it's really great to actually have your eyes closed when you listen. Particularly the first movement of this Beethoven piece, which is one of the most, it's a staggeringly amazing journey, emotionally and technically. Technically, one could talk about the exposition of the first movement, which moves through keys that you just simply wouldn't expect, changing from G major to B major without any modulation and so on. It's all amazing stuff. But what this leads to is the unbelievable emotional effect of this music. And something I noticed a very long time ago was the ending of the middle section of the first movement in this Beethoven, when he's just about to go back to the opening theme again. And I was captivated and moved by this very, very many years ago. And today, when it came, it really hit me, this moment. And then when the theme comes back, fortissimo, I was completely overwhelmed. And my 4-year-old daughter was actually with me in the rehearsal, and she looked up and she wanted to know why was I crying. And I said, don't worry, it's just music tears. So she then kept saying to me, oh, you've got music tears. So I bring all this up because I think it's important to remember the insignificance of music, its role and its power to do good and to affect us. And I'm sure you all know why I'm saying these things, why we need music, why we need this resource. I have a few minutes. I wouldn't mind just also telling you a little bit about my piece, which is ostensibly why I was asked to do this talk. My piece opens the concert. It's a 10-minute piece. It's not very long. It is called The Pot of Pulgarve. And you can see all this in the program and so on. But I'd like to just tell you a little bit about it. The title and the place has got nothing really to do with the music. The music is in no way a description of the Pot of Pulgarve or in any way an attempt to capture the landscape. It's nothing like that. It's more like, if you say to me the Pot of Pulgarve, I will remember the time when I visited the Pot of Pulgarve. I know exactly when it was, I know exactly what I was doing, and more importantly, I can recall how I was feeling at that time. And the music is actually really a capturing of how I felt at the time. And how I was feeling at the time was a lot of excitement, a lot of energy, a lot of positivity, a lot of light, a lot of happiness. And when I hear the piece being played, I do actually think this is how I felt. I don't know if you will all necessarily buy into that straight away, and that's okay. It's not entirely certain to me. You will hear the piece and you'll think that it sounds happy. In actual fact, it is complex music. There's no two ways about it. It's a very fast piece. and it's harmonically a very complex piece. It's the sort of piece that I think you probably would need to hear several times, and this is a problem because you're only going to hear it once. So, some of the things that I do notice about it that I think might be of interest to you. It starts off with a very simple chord, which is basically got two intervals in it. Perfect fifth, which is the most consonant, the second most consonant interval, and a semitone, which is more or less the most dissonant. And there's a balance throughout the piece between consonance and dissonance. This piece is as easily as consonant as it is dissonant. And quite often the piece is based on very simple chords, maybe 6-note chords. And every instrument in the whole orchestra is playing just this chord. And you can actually hear that. And what you can hear is sometimes like a three-dimensional effect. You can hear the cellos playing this chord. You can hear the woodwinds behind them playing this chord. You can hear other instruments playing just this chord. And it really does work like a three-dimensional effect that you can really only hear live. You can try to hear it on CD or whatever, but hearing it in this room, like we're doing today, is an effect that you can't really get any other way. The last thing I'll say about the piece is that it is... No, I'll say a couple more. This piece is not unique in doing this, but it is a feature of contemporary practice that everybody in the orchestra has their own part. They don't all play solo the whole way through, and they often join together and play in unison and so on, but in at least, every instrument has at least one place where they're playing their own solo part, and you'll hear a part in the piece towards the end where every single string instrument, apart from the basses, plays a solo, so a cadenza for every single string instrument at once. On the other hand, I have a long, slow melody that keeps coming back in the piece. And you first hear it played by 4 violins. 4 violins playing together is probably the minimum to create that classic string chorus effect. But every time this melody comes back, it comes back in a different shape, but you can recognize the melody. Every time it comes back, there are more violins, 6 violins, 8 violins, 10 violins, until eventually at the very end of the piece, all the first and second violins play in unison, which is something you don't hear very often. They all play very, very high, and they all play with the mute on. And this creates a sound which will be familiar to you because it's actually deliberately based on old light music pieces, such as Theme from a Summer Place or strings in Bruno Mantovani orchestras. So the melody comes back at the end with this glistening high music, which I think you will hear it from your past, almost this timbre of high strings in unison. And this is all going very, very quickly now. So I think I've pretty much said what I want to say about this. That
you have not said is if it wasn't for the Ulster Orchestra, we would not hear your music. And it's very, very important that we keep our Ulster Orchestra.
Yep. This is my sort of implicit message that I've been trying to bring home the whole way through. That what we are able to do is to hear amazing music, which has miraculous effects, which can't be achieved any other way, which is central to any form of civilization. I'll tell you an interesting anecdote to finish. I had the privilege a couple of years ago of supervising a PhD in composition by a composer who came over here from Kurdistan in Iraq. And he was an individual who had been persecuted as a Kurd, and he did his PhD in composition here, and then he went straight back over to Iraq to take up a job in Kurdistan. He's now not in danger, but you can see that the situation in Iraq is such that he could easily be in danger. Iraq is a country which is completely falling apart, which is completely torn apart by war, which hasn't been a functioning state for a very long time. And Iraq, in that state, still thinks that it should have an orchestra. Thank you.